What is going on, my dudes and dudettes? It's Sean you with SNS Serpentarium, and today, as you've seen in the title, we're going to discuss temperature gradients. So first off, we'll talk about what is a temperature gradient. A temperature gradient is a difference in temperature. That's what a gradient is, right? Think of like a slope. Okay, so the gradient is the difference in height, or the angle. Okay, well, the angle would be sort of the temperature change really per degrees burning. That's neither here nor there. That's just a bit of side math. So the importance of a temperature gradient then. What a temperature gradient gives your snake, it gives the snake the option of what exact temperature it needs to be. So if you've got a hot spot of 92 and a cool end of 80 degrees, it can choose any temperature between those two temperatures that it wants to be at, stay there, and then if it changes its mind, it wants to be hotter or cooler, it'll just move either way then towards the hot spot or the cool end, and that's how it'll, thermoregulate itself. As you know, snakes can't thermoregulate themselves. They need external sources to do it for them. Whereas we are lucky. Mammals, they do it themselves. Their brain and so on, decides what temperature we need to be, which is constant. And then our body just takes care of it without us having to think about it, which is, it's really convenient. But snakes, they don't have that luxury. They're cold-blooded. They're exotherms. Exothermic, as you know, needs heat going in, so that's just some background science. Sorry. Yeah, so the importance then of a proper temperature gradient is obviously, if your hot spot is say 92, all right, and you're keeping a ball python, right? So say your hot spot is exactly where it needs to be. Say you're keeping a ball python or a royal python and your hot spot is 92. The cool end then is only 60 degrees, and I'm talking in Fahrenheit here, all right? What that'll mean for the snake is when it's on a hot spot, for one thing, it's going to have a massive draft. But another thing, because that cool end is too cool, it won't actually be able to leave the hot spot. So what'll happen is the snake will be too warm all the time. That'll upset it a lot. It's not going to do the snake any good at all without that proper temperature gradient, because it'll have to stay on the hot side the whole time. And it's just going to put a lot of unnecessary stress on that animal. It's likely to go off food. It could even catch a respiratory infection because of that draft that you've got going. So it really, it's not a good idea to do something like that. You're much better off really keeping a reptile room at a set temperature, like what I've got here. I've got 2 oil radiators up here. All of this is nice and insulated. Obviously you can see the wood there. It's insulated on the outside as well. I've got polystyrene and stuff like that. Keeps it all nice and insulated. Where the camera is now, I'm actually putting a curtain there so that I can close the curtain and it cuts the room off so it's smaller. So then what that means then is obviously it's less space for the heat to flow around, and it'll keep that section up to a better temperature without wasting heat on this part then of the room where there's no snakes being kept. It's just the freezer, and it's pointless heating that up then. It'll just be going straight out the door. So that's something to bear in mind is your ambient temperature of your room. Obviously your hot spot is your hot spot, and that needs to be where it needs to be. Control that with a thermostat. I use pulse thermostats, as I've said in the past. I live and die by these pulse stats. They keep the temperature exact, so you can just set and forget. As long as the stat actually stays where it needs to be, you're laughing. So that's how I like to do things really. I wouldn't recommend just using a heat mat in the UK for sure. the ambient temperature isn't going to be where it needs to be, and that's sort of where we come on to the Pro-Viv territory then, if you don't have a room full of reptiles, because otherwise there's no sense in heating a whole room just because you've got one rub in there and you need to keep the ambient temp up, rather than just keeping it in a Viv with, you know, a CEE, right, a ceramic heat emitter. They'll heat the whole Viv up, and the cool end temp then will be slightly warmer than what it is outside the Viv, so then, you know, it'll be, you know, where it needs to be then, basically. But if, you know, if you were to stick a heat mat in a Viv, or a heat mat under a you know, a tank, and you go to bed in the night, the heat's off, it's not going to be, you know, 80 degrees on that cool end. It's just not, it's unrealistic. The hot end will probably be where it needs to be if you've got the start in the right place, but the cool end is going to be far too cool, and that isn't going to be this, you know, do the snake any good. And then say you go to work the next day, the heating's obviously going to be off again. Say it's a cold winter day, you know, your living room temperatures might drop to like 60 degrees, 55 degrees Fahrenheit, you know what I mean, if it's a cold day, and that's not going to do the snake any good. It'll be slightly warmer than that in the Viv, sure, but or the rub, sure, but that cold end isn't going to be much over 60 degrees then in that case, and, you know, the snake's going to have a nasty draft, as I said, even if it is stuck under the hot end. So that's why really it's very key to keep your thermal gradients in check. And that's why you need to be checking your cool ends as well as your hot ends to make sure that they're not too hot or too cold. And that just keeps everything ticking over nicely and your snake nice and healthy. So that's all I can talk about really for this topic. I hope you've all learned something new. I'm really enjoying making these videos now. We're really getting up there in the video count now. If you're new around here, guys, make sure you subscribe. I'm making videos daily. I'm answering every question any sub is throwing at me really at the moment. So get your questions in the comment section before my channel grows too large for me to answer everyone. And I'll see you in the next one. So thanks, guys.